Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer Stay. This is Coloring Bliss. I have here with me Steve, my business partner and husband.
Hello everybody.
And I have little Rose sound asleep on her pillow back here to keep us company while we talk about a really cool thing. Steve and I have found a new watercolor paper for the Bliss print shop. I'm so excited to announce this because there's not very many people printing on watercolor paper, and we are one of the only ones. You can come to the Bliss print shop and get watercolor paper printed coloring books and Swatch books, and we have all kinds of cool supplies that you can have printed on the watercolor paper. And we also have it available that you can buy it loose leaf so that you can print at your own leisure at home on your own printer. Isn't that cool? If you've ever tried to print on watercolor paper, you know how cool this is. We're going to talk about why this paper is so magical and why it works this way. So let me start by showing you a really cool info card that Steve has created for us. This is it right here, and this is the watercolor paper right here. So this is the new watercolor paper. I'm so excited. So the Bliss watercolor paper, the first thing, the most exciting thing is that we've been able to source a thicker watercolor paper. Now, what does that mean for you? We're going from being 146 GSM to 228 GSM. This means that the printer paper is now more likely to stand up against a lot of water. Our watercolor paper before did great, but there was some warping. If you worked with our watercolor paper, it warped a little bit. Usually it calmed down after the paper dried, but this paper does even better now with the lack of warping that you will find when you work with watercolor paper. If you were to go look at, say, like the Cadillac of watercolor paper in the art world is called Arches, A-R-C-H-E-S, and it's a lot thicker and heavier and has an extreme texture on it. And so if you tried to print on that paper, first of all, your paper might not go through the printer because it's so thick, and secondly, the texture on it makes it so that the poor little laser printer or inkjet printer just can't get that ink into all those little hills and valleys of that paper. That paper is awesome, but it does not work for printers. So this paper here, what makes it our favorite is that it is an actual real watercolor paper, so it has sizing treatment on it. If you don't know what sizing is, it's a treatment that they do on watercolor paper to kind of give a barrier between the water type products you're going to put on the paper and the paper itself. It gives the paper a chance to survive all this punishment that we're about to give it. So that's one thing that makes watercolor paper special. It's acid free, which we love, and this is a cold press texture. So when they say cold press, it has to do with the way the paper is milled, and usually cold press paper has a bit more of a texture, which we love. We need a little bit of texture when it comes to working with watercolor. It's a good thing. But if there's too much texture, we can't put it through our printers. So this is sort of, we like to call it the Goldilocks. Well, that's what we call the mixed media paper, but this is a Goldilocks paper. Not too textured, but not too smooth. I'm going to bring it up to camera and see. I doubt you can see the texture. Let's try the other camera. Maybe we can see it on here. So this paper has a texture on the correct side, so the side that has the sizing on it, and then if you flip it over, the other side is way smoother, so it's easy to tell that you're on the correct side of the paper. That's also new with our new watercolor paper. So it's thicker, the texture's just right, It's more evident which side is the right side and the wrong side. I mean, this is quite a cool upgrade when it comes to the watercolor paper. So it is a very high quality paper, and you can trust it to do what you want it to do. In fact, we're going to do some experiments here in just a minute and show you how you can use your water-based markers on it. You can use your water-soluble pencils like your Inktense on it. You can use watercolor on it. It's ready for you to really attack it with water-based type materials and get beautiful results. You can do wet on wet. You can do wet on dry or dry on dry. I mean, there's just so many fun things you can do with a watercolor paper. I'm really excited. All right, now that we've talked about sort of the specs of the paper, let's start testing it. I want to start with some water-based markers. So this could be your Crayola markers. It can be your Tombow markers. Anything that is water-based. So these are not alcohol markers, they're water-based markers. So if you smell your marker and it smells really strong of alcohol, you've got an alcohol marker in your hand. But if you smell it and it doesn't have a strong scent, it's a really high chance you've got a water-based marker in your hand. So I'm going to be using my Tombows today, but any water-based markers, even your Crayolas, will work for this. And I think I'll color up a few of these little bushy trees with our Tombow markers. That sounds like fun. And I'm going to use, instead of a brush with water, I'm going to use what they supply, which is a colorless blender, to blend out the colors of the markers. So let's see what we can do with a Tombow marker on our new watercolor paper. Alright, for the tree clumps, I'm going to be using my Tombow, which are water-based markers, and I'm using 2 greens and a yellow and the colorless blender. So the color numbers are 249, 195, and the yellow is 055, and of course the colorless blender is N00. What I love about working on watercolor paper with water-based markers is that I can be quite abusive. I can really scrub those markers into the paper, and I don't have to worry so much about streaking or especially something called pilling. But on watercolor paper, working with these markers is a dream. They blend beautifully and it's so much fun. Alright, before we start coloring with our water-soluble pencils, I wanted to show you a quick example of that pilling and the streaking that I was just talking about. In my hand I have a beautiful piece of paper. This is our mixed media paper. It's a nice thick cardstock. It's awesome, but it does not have the qualities of a watercolor paper. And let me show you what happens when I use those same markers that I just used. And I start doing what I just did, which was lay down the dark green, then grab my colorless blender and try to blend it out. Look, it won't even blend out. It just soaks straight into those paper sponges I just mentioned. If I try to grab the yellow, the lighter green, which I blended into it, again, it's not, oh, do you see the pilling? Do you see the pilling and the streaking? It's so frustrating. And then at the end I came in and added some yellow to make it pop. And look at the pilling. And it feels like there's, oh, you gotta look at the tiny tip of my pen. Look at the little crumbs of paper on that tip of the pen. That's pilling. That's a mess. That will ruin a piece of art really fast. And this is working on a beautiful, heavy, thick cardstock. It's just not meant to have a lot of water and a lot of agitation on it. It just pills and falls apart. That's just a feature of that kind of paper. It's better for color pencils, it's better for alcohol markers, it's better for pastels, that kind of thing. And if you are going to use a water-based marker on a cardstock like this, tread very lightly, don't expect to get much blends, and just go slow and careful. That's my recommendation. But if you do it on watercolor paper, look at the pretty blends. Look how pretty. I mean, I can't wait to see. We probably won't do this whole coloring page right now, but think how pretty it would be with all the greens filled in all over. Oh, so pretty. Maybe we should color this bird right here now using a water-soluble pencil. That's a kind of pencil that you can color with. It's a colored pencil, and then you hit it with a little bit of water and it just sort of explodes with color. We're going to use Steve's favorite water-soluble pencils. Aren't these your favorite?
Yeah, and the Graphitin also.
Oh yeah, we can't forget the Graphitin pencils, but I think his second favorite are the Derwent Inktense, the mighty Derwent Inktense. So let's go ahead and color this bird. Maybe it's a bluebird? I feel like it's a bluebird. Let's go for it. All right, for my cute little bluebird who has a charming little yellow tummy, I used just 3 Inktense pencils. I used Sicilian Yellow 0220 and Lapis Blue 0825 and Bright Blue 1000. Those 3 pencils created this charming little bird, and the first thing I did was lay down a whole bunch of color with my dry pencils, and then I came in with my number 8 round watercolor brush and activated all of that beautiful color. Now there were certain areas on the bird that I wanted a more intense look, and for that I used more of a dry on wet, is that what you'd call it, Steve? Where I took the pencil dry onto the wet paper and colored more pigment down, and it releases so much color. It's so pretty. And then on the eye, I took the dry pencil, dipped it into my wet glass to get the tip wet, and then I was able to lay down a whole lot of color on that eye and on the feet. Now, if you'd like more tips and tricks on how to color with your Inktense pencils and other water-soluble pencils, make sure you check out the video in the description where I go into a lot of detail on these ideas. It's such a fun product to use. To get us started with the third product I want to demonstrate, which is watercolor paint, we're going to use my new set of Paul Rubens. Check out the video in the link to learn more about these beautiful paints that were sent to me from Paul Rubens. Okay, for the branch, I'm going to do a wet on wet technique, which means I lay down some clear, clean water first in the area that I want the color, and then I come in with the different colors. I started with a nice light brown, and then I added some darker brown at the end. I love wet on wet, how it looks so seamless, and when you drip those colors in, they just bloom and blossom into the water. It's so beautiful. Now, one thing you need to be aware of, if you are printing with an Inkjet printer, remember the properties of that printer. It's basically liquid ink being sprayed onto the paper. Now, that means because the paper is watercolor paper and it has that sizing on it that I mentioned before, that sizing can repel that Inkjet printer ink and cause it to bleed a little bit when you're working with it as a coloring page. So keep that in mind. Try to stay off of those lines to reduce the amount of bleeding. Now, if you're printing with a laser printer, that's a different story. Laser is basically a powder that gets baked onto the paper. So the sizing on the watercolor paper doesn't affect that toner as much. So I would recommend using a laser printer if you have one, but it will still work great even with your Inkjet printer. You may just have to deal with a little bit of bleed. Now, I can't help myself. We've got to use a little bling on this paper and see how it reacts. So I pulled out my Kuretake Pearl Color paints, and we're going to color up the lettering at the base of the page with some beautiful pink and see how it turns out. One of the last steps is to take a blow dryer and dry all the paint and all the layers down so that you can see how it looks. Any water-based product changes a lot as it dries, so you usually want to bring it to all the way dry and then decide if you need to add a few more details. For instance, I grabbed my Inktense blue pencil and added a little bit more shading into my bluebird, and I also went on to the tree trunk with my dark brown Paul Rubens color and just added a few more details into that trunk. And I made a little mistake, so I used a wet paper towel and lifted some of that paint off, which is another one of the awesome aspects of using a watercolor paper. It's so cool. I love how this is turning out. Let's take a close look at it together now. All right, let me bring this up to camera and you can see how my cute little bluebird turned out, and right next to the green of the trees, that's what we used the Tombows on, and this was Inktense. Here's the Tombows some more down here. So cute. And then the tree trunk turned out so pretty. I love the wet on wet wash we did of the whole tree and then added in some of those details to just make that pop. And then down at the bottom is where I used my Kuretake paints to paint up the name. Look at that shine! So pretty. I love how it turned out. It makes me want to color the whole page, but I'm not going to be coloring the whole page right now. I'm going to be doing it in a workshop where we're talking about how to color white objects, because Mishka's belly right here, his chest fur, is a very stark white, so we're going to use that for that workshop. So if you want to learn about our workshops that we do at Coloring Bliss, check out the link in the video description. And if you like any of these products, like the Kuretake paints that I used for his name, or the Paul Rubens paint, I'll put links to everything I possibly can in the video so that you can purchase these products and enjoy them as much as I do. Something else I wanted to point out here on my coloring page is the lack of warping. I used a lot of water, especially up here on this trunk, and you can see that this paper hasn't warped, or if it has, it's very little. And there's no warping down here where I used a ton of water on the paint. I'll show you the back too, so you can see that there's no bleed through or ghosting going on. This paper is performing beautifully. Alright, so let's talk about how to get your hands on this paper. There are 3 different ways for you to get this paper. First off is through our Bliss print shop. So there'll be a link in the video description that will take you to our Bliss print shop where it's available for you to choose as an option and have your coloring books printed on those watercolor paper or your swatch books. It's an option and it's ready, and the paper is sitting there in our print shop waiting for you to put an order in. And don't forget, if you're a paid member here at Coloring Bliss, you get a discount at the Bliss print shop. Now there's a second way for you to get this paper. If you would like the paper for your own stash at home, a nice little stack of 40 sheets that you can print in your own printer at home, we have that as an option at the Bliss print shop. Now that only costs $24.99 for a stack of 40 sheets. That's amazing, and I'll tell you why that's amazing here in a minute when we compare it to the third option. What we do here at the Bliss print shop is we go direct to the supplier and we get huge sheets of this watercolor paper. And Steve then physically takes these huge stacks of paper to a shop where they are cut down to 8.5 inches by 11 inches, so they're perfect for most printers. Now that whole process we are able to buy in bulk, and that gets the price down so that for only $24.99 you can have a stack of 40 sheets. Now that's only 62 cents per piece of paper, which in the watercolor paper world is astounding. That is a really good deal. So that's the second option. If you'd like your own stack of paper for your own use at home, then I highly recommend that. And there is a third option, and this is to go to Amazon and pick up this pad right here. This is the paper in a small pad version. It's 9 inches by 12 inches, and you get 15 sheets. And this little pad right here is about $15 US on Amazon right now. That means that's $1 per page. So buying through our print shop, you get it cut down to the right size. If you buy this pad, you're going to have to cut it yourself or take it to a shop and have it cut. So if you buy it from the print shop, you get it for only 62 cents per page, and it's all pre-cut. Pretty cool. Now, one thing you need to keep in mind is that doesn't include shipping. We have to charge a little bit to get it to you. And if you have Amazon Prime, that means you might be able to have this pad sent to you free shipping. So that might factor in as you're deciding between the 3 different ways for you to order and use and love this beautiful watercolor paper. It's just so cool that we can offer this. We worked so hard to make this an option for you, and we're proud to make an upgrade to this paper that works so spectacularly. Now there's one more quick thing I want to mention, and that is we still are looking for entries for the Bliss Pet coloring book that we're putting together for volume 1. That's what this picture is for, our little Mishka. It was made by an illustrator based on this photo right here, and it was turned into a charming little coloring page that you've seen me working on. I love it. So if you would like your little pet, here is Rose turned into a coloring page. Here is a second picture of her, and the final version that the illustrator created for us of little Rose. There are 3 different ways for you to get your pet into Bliss Volume 1. So follow the link in the video description and it will take you to our website where you can learn about all the different ways, and there's even one way that guarantees your pet a spot in this upcoming volume 1 of Bliss Pets. It's such a fun project, and we're going to be closing volume 1 down pretty soon, so if you would like your photo turned into an illustration of your adorable little pet, then it can be a feathery pet, a scaly pet, a furry pet, whatever kind of pet you have that you want to have in this book, we're looking for those entries. So hurry on over to that link and get your entries in very soon for a chance to be part of that book. Steve has been working so hard on getting the paper all sorted out, getting the Bliss Pet book done. Thank you, Steve, for all the work you do to make the Coloring Bliss world such an amazing place.
Oh, you're welcome.
Couldn't do it without him, so we sure appreciate him. I hope you learned a lot about watercolor paper today and learned some tips and tricks on how to color on it. And follow all the links in the video description, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe. We are getting dangerously close to the 100,000 subscribers and I need your help. Make sure you subscribe to our channel to help us get that goal. Thank you so much for all of your support for our channel and for our business. We are so very grateful, and I hope you all have a wonderful, colorful, blissful day. Bye-bye, everyone. Fix that pillow.
You interrupted her nap.
Yeah, by pulling out a marker. Okay, are you all settled in? Let's pull out this really cool, look how cool this is, Steve. Do you remember that this does that?
Oh, I forgot about that.
Isn't that cool? It's like steps to artist heaven or something like that. Okay, I'm going to pick a couple greens and let's get going.